Welcome everyone, good afternoon. I appreciate you joining our July webinar. As Sarah said, my name is Lana Archibald, and today we're going to take a look at submitting candidates to your contacts. That's also referred to as a client submission. More specifically, this is what we're going to be covering. We'll look at how to format candidate resumes using our document editor, also creating client submissions, and then thirdly, submitting multiple candidates to a contact. We'll be sending documentation to all of you following this webinar, and with the articles that we'll send you, that's also going to give you more insight into the topics that I'm going to go through with you this afternoon. The first thing I want to do is talk to you about what does a client submission mean? How does that fit into the candidate hiring process? And this is all based off of the standard Bullhorn hiring process. So just keep in mind, it might not be applicable for every single business. The client submission sometimes is referred to as a send out. It comes after the internal submission. So after the candidate is reviewed internally, then we're going to send them to the contact that we're considering them for the job for. And then that way our contact can determine if they're a good fit or not. So typically with the client submission, the contact is going to review the resume of the candidate. They're going to decide if they want to move forward and schedule an interview with them or not. And just so that we all know what I'm talking about, here's a visual that represents the Bullhorn candidate hiring process. As you'll see here up at the top, it all starts with the pre-screen. This is our opportunity to vet the candidate. This is my opportunity to determine, do they have the right skills and experience that would be appropriate for my firm or for my clients. From there, we would move to the internal submission. The key word is internal. That's our opportunity to take a look at that candidate and make a decision. Are they a good match for a particular job that we're working on? If they are, then we can internally submit them. Once we internally submit that candidate, we then move to the client submission. That's our topic for this afternoon. And as I mentioned prior, that's when we decide that we're going to take the resume of the candidate and we're going to submit it to our contact for review. They're going to review it, they're going to love it, and they're going to want to schedule an interview. Once we schedule the interview, which keep in mind, sometimes they bring candidates back for multiple interviews, 2, 3, 4 even at times. We can document all of that as part of our workflow. The interviews, of course, are going to go really well, and then ultimately we make the placement. So one thing that I want to do, I'm going to pause my screen just for a second, and I'm going to get out of these slides because what I want to do is I want to go into Bullhorn. And we're going to go through this process together. In just a second, you're going to see my screen. All right, I'm logged into Bullhorn. And as we start this process, I'm going to be working with a candidate, Jeff Jones. And just so that you know, Jeff Jones has already been pre-screened and internally submitted for a net developer position. And I've determined that this job would suit him well. So now what I've decided is I'm going to send his resume over to my client for a review. I'm in Bullhorn, and I'm going to use the fast find up at the top so that I can find Jeff Jones. There he is. I'm going to go ahead and open his record. And as I was mentioning, you'll see it here as part of the workflow. He's already been pre-screened and he's already been internally submitted. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to click on the Files tab at the top. I want to make sure that his resume is presentable for my client before I send it over. Now that I'm in the Files tab, I can see his resume. I'm going to go ahead and select it over on the far left. Now that I've done that, in the upper right-hand corner, I'm going to select an action. And you'll notice when I select an action, right in the middle, it says Create Standard Resume. Let me go ahead and select that. What this is doing is it's opening up our Bullhorn document editor. The document editor is actually a relatively new feature of Bullhorn. I want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about it. So the document editor is what's going to allow me to edit this document directly within Bullhorn. And that means I can spend more time in Bullhorn, less time constantly having to close it and reopening it and toggle here and there. If you've used any other sort of word processor, then you're already familiar with the general layout of it. You'll notice there's the toolbar that goes across the top. It contains all of my formatting options and the actions I can take. So I'll just hover over it at the top. I'm guessing a lot of you have likely used a word processing program in the past, so I'm not going to spend much time at all covering the basics. Just know that the majority of the same functionality is now available here for you in Bullhorn. All right, since Create Standard Resume was already selected from Jeff's record, you see it's open here on the screen. And what you'll also notice is here's my company logo right here in the header, Acme Staffing. If I wanted to, I could change anything within this resume at this point if I wanted to, but I'm going to say it looks good. So all I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to save it. Bear with me here for just a second. All right, so I'm ready to save it. I just clicked on the file in the upper left-hand corner. I'll save as. I'm going to rename this. Instead of it staying as Jeff Jones Resume, I'm going to change it and I'm going to call it Jeff Jones Formatted Resume. You'll also notice directly below it where it says the file extension. If I click on that drop down, it gives me only two options. And the option is Microsoft Word and the hypertext markup language. So just a couple of different things, the HTML. You might be asking yourself though, what if I wanted to save this as a PDF? Well, I'm going to show you how you can do that. We'll do that in just a second. I'm going to scroll down just a little bit. Whoop, let me go back to that. Let's go back to the file, save again. I did want to just highlight below the file extension where you see the type, which says formatted resume, and then the distribution, which says general. I'm going to leave those as is. I don't need to put in any description at this point, so I'm ready to click save. As I can see, it's been successfully saved. I'm back on Jeff's record, and I'm going to actually click the refresh button in the upper right hand corner so we can see it pull through, still in the Files tab. And now I'm able to see the resume that I've just created. At this point, I want to show you how to save it as a PDF because I don't want it as a Word document anymore. I'm going to select the resume from the Files tab. This time I'm going to come over here to that blue selected button. I'm going to click on the drop down and I'm going to choose Edit. Now, if I wasn't creating a standard resume, like I just showed you a second ago, then this is the way I'd normally open up the document editor. You'll see I'm right back to where I was before. And this time, when I click File and I click Save As, and we go to our file extension, you'll notice that I have PDF as an option. So let's do that. Let's save it as a PDF. Again, I'll leave the type and the distribution the same. I'll click Save. It's successfully saved. I'm going to go back to Jeff. Let's refresh so we can see that PDF pull through. And there you go. So that's all I really wanted to show you in regards to the document editor. If you are looking for any additional information regarding it, remember we're going to send an article after this webinar is over. Also, please note that the document editor is not available within the team edition of Bullhorn. So if you don't have it enabled and you'd like to have it, please have an account or support contact, reach out to our Bullhorn support and they'll be happy to help you with that. So let's move on. The next thing that I want to talk to you about is the client submission. We've formatted Jeff's resume so it's presentable for me to send to my client now. And it's recommended to perform the hiring process activities directly from the job record. I'll explain why in just a moment. Remember the workflow icons? We have those right here on Jeff's record. I can see that Jeff was pre-screened and internally submitted. In fact, if I click on that internal submission workflow icon, I'll be able to see below, I'm able to see all of the jobs that we've submitted Jeff to. Good news, it's that net developer that we were talking about. I'm actually going to go to that job record, so I'll click on the hyperlink for the net developer. And remember, just a moment ago, I was saying that typically, as a best practice, we would work a job from a job record. So that's why I've come over here. I see that internal submission. That's done, so I'm going to click on it again. This time, when I'm doing it from the job record, it's going to show me the candidates that have been submitted to this job. So there's Jeff Jones. And just to the left of his name, I'm going to expand it. And you'll notice that I have these options of what I want to do. And we're focusing on the client submission. So let me go ahead and select that. Now, what I see are all of the files that are attached to Jeff Jones' record. There are 3, a couple of them that we just created ourselves right now. The way that it's set up is that if I were to click on the blue button that says prepare email, that means that all 3 of these files would be attached to the email. I don't really want to send 3 different versions of the resume to my client. So it is important that I uncheck the boxes that I don't want to send those files of. I'll go ahead and move forward with that PDF that I just selected. Now I know I've got the file I want, and I can safely prepare the email. So let's go ahead and click that blue button that says prepare email. And now what I'm looking at is our compose a message screen. This is where the message type is automatically defaulting as a mass mailing. I don't want to change that message type. I want to keep it because this is what's going to ensure that our client submission logs properly. And remember what I said a few moments ago about it's always better to carry out tasks from the job record whenever possible? Well, here's the reason why. Because in this to field that says Katie Barnes, Bullhorn knows who my contact is for this job, and it automatically populates the to field. Imagine if I had initiated this client submission from the candidate record, then and in this to field, I would have to search for that correct contact record. I want to make sure that I choose the right one. In this case, I don't have to worry about that. It's already selected for me. The other thing to consider is that if I wanted multiple contacts at this company to receive the email, that would be easy enough. I could just add their names to the to field because it's being sent as a mass mailing, which means that any additional names I add into the to field, they're not going to see each other. They each receive their own email from me to them. So I've only been working with Katie, so I'll just leave it as it is. I don't need to add anyone else. At this point, I just need to compose the message. So I'm going to scroll down to the subject line and let me add one quickly. We'll just say Jeff Jones for net developer job. And then when I come down into the body of the message, when I start typing it, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select in the upper right-hand corner the personalization. I'm going to choose the first name. I'll talk more about that in just a second. So let me compose my email. Let's see. We'll say, I think that Jeff would be a great fit for your job. Please review his attached resume. All right, and I already have my default email signature in there. Good, so I've got my email composed. Since the client submission is sent as a mass mailing, remember we saw that up at the top, that's what allows me to use this personalized tag. That's where I came up in the upper right-hand corner and it selected the first name. So now it says, hi, $, first name, $. What happens is when my contact Katie receives this email, that's not what she's going to see. Hers is going to say, hi, Katie, I think that Jeff would be a great fit for your job. So if I had included multiple names in that to field, by using this personalized tag, that's going to allow each person to receive a personal email from me to them. The key is it has to be as a mass mailing. Don't change that. All right, I'm going to scroll past the body of my message. You'll notice that the resume I had selected, that's already attached. As I continue to scroll through, you'll notice that there's other fields. I'm going to leave all of these fields alone. I'm going to scroll to the very bottom, and then down here it says log as client submission. That's exactly what I want. Bullhorn knows that, so I'll leave it as yes. And I also can see the candidate, Jeff Jones, his name is there. That's perfect. And then I'm ready to send it. Now, before I click send, I will just highlight, if I did want to add any additional action, I could add a task at this point to follow up later if I wanted. I'm not going to do that now. I'll go ahead and click send. So I've sent the email. I'm going to click refresh in my upper right-hand corner, and look at that. The client submission workflow icon now has a check mark in it. And depending on if Katie also thinks Jeff would be a good fit for the job, as you know, the next step would be to schedule an interview between the both of them. I'm hoping that this is going to lead to a placement for that candidate. Let's look at it a little bit differently, though. The steps that I just went through are for submitting one candidate to your contact. But I'm guessing that you could have some times when you're going to have a list of candidates that you need to submit to your contact. Now, I could add a separate client submission for each candidate, just like the steps that we went through, but that's very time consuming. So in this next example, I'm going to work with a tear sheet that I created that's comprised of candidates that have that net developer skill. Let me go into my menu. I'm going to navigate over to my tear sheets, which is down here under the home tab. I'll go to my tear sheet list. There's the tear sheet I'm looking for, the net developers. Let me expand it. It has those 7 candidates on it that I'm looking for. I am interested in all 7, so I'm going to select all of them. At this point, now that I have those candidates selected, I'm going to click on the blue selected button, and you'll notice that client submission is an option. So I can click add client submission, and at this point, it's now showing me the screen for all 7 candidates, and it's listing all of the files that are associated with each of those records. Just like what we did with Jeff Jones, I'd want to take a moment, go through, make sure I've got the right record selected. If there's others that should be deselected, I would go ahead and do that. And then once I've got those right records selected, then down below, I can prepare the email. Again, just like what we've done. The only difference is this time, since I wasn't documenting directly from the job, you'll see how that to field is empty. So this is where I could search for Katie, and let me go ahead and type her name in here. Now, there's 2 matches for Katie. One has a green dot and the other has the orange dot. I'm working with my contact, Katie, so I do want to make sure that I choose the one with the orange dot to indicate the contact record. And just keep in mind, if you happen to know the unique Bullhorn ID number for Katie, I could have typed that in as well. That would have avoided me pulling up multiple records. But here it is, right where we were before. I would compose the body of the message just like I did before. I'll just say candidates for net developer job. And then, of course, I could come down into the body of the message and I could retype that message. Once I've done that, I scroll down a little bit further. You can see there's the attachment. There's the resume of all of those 7 candidates. And then also, as I scroll down just a little bit further, I want to make sure that I've got all of my fields populated as they should be. We're logging as a client submission. And then I'm going to pop back up here. You see where there's this field that says job reference? I want to make sure that these candidates' resumes are referenced to that net developer job. So let me go ahead and type that in here. Find my job that I want to reference. Oh, it should be in here. Let me try it again. I should have my net developer job in here. In fact, I'll show you. I'm going to do it a different way since it's not coming up that way. In my bowling alley, just as a quick side note, you see where I have that unique ID number? Well, I can populate that in here. I'll show you how that works. And that will find the net developer that I'm looking for. Continue to scroll down. As we saw before, it's logging as the client submission. There's all of my candidates, and then I'm going to go ahead and click send. By sending this, that means that client submission workflow icon is now going to be lit up for all of the candidates that I've just submitted. And if I go back to that job record one more time and I'll refresh it, look at that now, the client submission, it indicates that there are 8 that we've submitted. And in fact, since I already have it open, you can see them all listed below. So now my contact Katie has plenty of candidate resumes to look through, and I'm positive one of them is going to get that net developer job. I'm going to just quickly go back to my PowerPoint slides. Bear with me here for just 1 second. You'll see them just momentarily. And I just want to quickly recap, if you don't mind. Here we go. So here's everything that we've quickly been able to go through. We covered the document editor as far as creating that standard resume, also creating the client submission, and whether we did that for one individual candidate or also the ability to do it with multiple candidates for that contact. Don't forget that you're all going to receive articles that will cover today's topics, and I think we still have a few minutes, so any questions I think will be shared with me, and I'm happy to answer whatever I can.
Awesome. Thanks, Lana. So as Lana said, we're going to go ahead and move into the Q&A portion of the webinar. So our first question is, when you created a standard resume from the candidate record, the information automatically pulled into the header. Where did the header information come from?
Good question. What I've done is, you were asking me that question, I was getting back into Bullhorn so that I could show you. All right, so I'm back in here, and the standard resumes are actually, they're created through the use of a few system settings. What I'd have to do is I would go into my menu, and in my menu down at the bottom, I would need to click on the Tools tab, and within the Tools, you'll see there's System Settings. Now, as I'm clicking through that, one thing I just want to point out, if you're a standard user, you're probably not going to see that System Settings icon. It's really just designed for administrators of your system. But now that I'm in here, what I can do in the System Settings is I can search for resume, or filter, I should say. And then as I'm in here, what I would want to do is look for the resume header. Let me look at all my options here. The resume header HTML, which is right here. So it's the fourth one down. I can expand it. And then you'll notice in the value field, this is where I'd be able to include it. So the standard resume headers and footers are created using HTML. And I recommend having someone with HTML knowledge at your company. They would probably be the best suited to create these. They can be aligned as you see fit. Images can be added to them. There can be different font styles. You can also use merge fields. In fact, the list of merge fields appear in the hint below, and they would be surrounded by dollar signs. You see where there's a hint. I'll also just mention, I think merge fields are a great time saver. They pull information from various fields in the system that prevents a lot of manual entry. As an example, I could add current date to my resume header, always pull the date I create a standard resume. I could pull through the candidate's first and last name from their record. Basically, once you create what you like and you click save, then you can click that create standard resume from the candidate record, just like when I was back here on Jeff Jones, when I went up to that select in action to create standard resume. When you do that, then that's what you'll see all of your options are. Actually, I didn't select a resume to format, but yeah, brought me back here. The reason that there's different system settings is so that you can create and use up to 5 different standard resumes. So remember when I just clicked on that create standard resume, if you have say up to 5 different logos that you want to use, you could have that in there multiple times. You could create standard resume 1, create standard resume 2, and so on. Hope that answers your question.
Awesome. Thanks, Lana. Our next question is, as a manager, I'd like to be able to track client submissions that my team is performing. How can I easily do that?
That's a good one. So you have a few tools at your disposal. And I think one of the best ones is the recruiting activity report. That's actually a standard report that we offer. So now what I'm going to do, I'll go back into my menu. And I'm going to go back to my home tab. And I'm going to go down to reporting. I'm going to expand my standard reports. And there is a recruiting activity report. Let me go ahead and run that here. I could quickly put in my date range. I think I just have some data I'll just quickly pull for you. And I'm not going to filter for me. If I'm looking as a manager for my team, I could filter for my department and go ahead and generate the search. And then what this will do is it'll give me an opportunity to see, I need to rerun it one more time, but that will allow me to see for my department, the individuals. I'm going to quickly grab it again one more time, reporting. Let's expand standard report. Let me find my recruiting activity report. We'll do the same thing. I think I said last quarter for my department. And I can run this anytime that I want and see, I can see my departments. I happen to have 4 of them. Notice down below, if I expand my Boston team, I can see everyone here. And just as an example, Jess on my team, it looks like Jess has, in last quarter, submitted 88 internal submissions, 8 client submissions. If I expand next to Jess's name, I can actually see who those client submissions are. This is showing me those 88 internal submissions, but here they are. Those client submissions, it's here. I can see what job it's for. I can see the date that Jess did that. So it's a very helpful tool.
Awesome. Thanks, Lana. So we're actually running up against the hour here, so I'm going to cut it there for questions. But for anything that we did not have time to cover today, we will follow up via email with your question answers. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.